Hey everybody, how are you doing tonight? It is, I guess it's Thursday night, and I'm just doing a check-in. I want to see how everybody is feeling with everything that's going on right now. So definitely say hello if you're jumping on. I'm going to share this out. And if there's anybody that you know, I know that a lot of my clients have been feeling kind of isolated and lonely right now. And I thought it might be helpful to go live and discuss the concept of loneliness, because this is something that actually followed me through a lot of my life, where I was feeling really chronically a sense of emptiness, a sense of loneliness. And I can honestly say, it's funny, I didn't even realize it until I was discussing this with a client the other day, that I'm completely beyond that. Like, I have completely cured that. And it was a nice revelation, and it made me feel pretty awesome, pretty amazing. And so I thought this could be something that could be helpful to other people as well, especially during a time like right now, where a lot of us are quarantined, most of us are quarantined, and we are really spending a lot of time disconnected from what we're used to, right? Hey, Gretchen, thanks so much for being here. Yeah, right? And no matter who was around me, whether I had a group of people or a lot of people who loved me that were with me, it didn't really matter. I still felt lonely, this sense of like emptiness or a void inside of me. And then I felt like there was something wrong with me, or there was something that I was doing wrong, because I felt guilty, I guess, because I had all these people around me that loved me and supported me, but yet I still felt lonely. I still felt like there was something missing, And so, that wasn't the intention, was to cure the loneliness when I went into the energy work, the spiritual work, the self-development, the healing, holistic healing across the board, which basically means attending to the physical, the mental, the emotional, the energetic, right? So attending to all of that, and realizing that I can see myself as a whole person, right? And it wasn't until I did that and kind of made that cohesive that I felt much, I guess, just at this really deep inner peace, And I think this is being highlighted right now because during a time when there's a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty, people are feeling helpless, people are feeling confused, and really they don't know it's unpredictable, right? They don't know what to expect. The unknown is kind of on the horizon. So at this time, people can feel really unsafe and really unsure. And so this is really a good time for us to explore this part of ourselves and to be able to take the opportunity to say, this is an opportunity, right? This is an opportunity for me to get to know myself better. It's an opportunity for me to explore, why is this stuff going on? Because a lot of people right now are feeling isolated and are feeling lonely, especially people who don't have families at home, or who don't have a home. And so they're feeling like, I don't have access to people. I don't have access to, a lot of times, the things that kind of keep me going and keep me running on the hamster wheel and give me a sense of pride, but don't necessarily fuel me from deep within, right? And a lot of times those things are distractions for us, right? They can serve as distractions. And then we think that we're satisfied and we think that we're filled up, but then when those things go away, we're sitting with ourselves. And at that point, then sometimes we're questioning, what do I do with myself now? And that's really what I've been noticing mostly with my clients, is I'm seeing this spectrum. I'm seeing the people who are saying, oh my gosh, I have this desperate energy. I have so much that I want to do and put together and take care of during this time. And that leaves me feeling chaotic and kind of overwhelmed. And then I have the people who are saying, I feel really overwhelmed because I'm sitting here not knowing what to do with myself, and I'm feeling helpless and I really don't know what direction to go in. And so I thought it would be helpful to just talk about this topic a little bit, to let me know your thoughts on it. And if you have any questions about loneliness, about emptiness, about kind of that feeling of void, and realizing that it's times like these that really highlights when we feel lonely and when we feel isolated, regardless of whether there's people around us, and really regardless of what's going on in the world. Because yes, this can highlight those feelings, but typically it's a reflection of what's going on inside of us at a deeper level on a regular basis. And these crisis moments or these intense moments that can occur globally or locally or et cetera can really put a spotlight on those things, right? So, all right. I don't know if any of you have read it, but there's a book called The Anatomy of Loneliness by Teal Swan. And she's a spiritual guide and leader. And I haven't read the entire book. I have kind of used it in spotty ways, but I have kind of my own perspective on loneliness, and I'm going to add some of the tips that come from her book as well. So just want to credit her and show that to you guys so that if you have any interest in reading it, you can jump on that. She can be a little flowery in her writing and a little pretty philosophical. So you got to be in the mood, which is why I haven't really sat down and just like poured through it, because I need to take it in small doses, because some of it can just be kind of like thick and intense. But anyway, so this issue of isolation, let me know, raise your hand in the comments if you're feeling isolated, if you're feeling alone, if you feel like for a lot of your life you felt this sense of emptiness or this void within you that you don't know that you can fill. And so like I was saying before, this is something that I didn't intentionally go into healing for. I went into healing because of my medical issues, you know, because of my health problems. And at that point, I was getting a certain amount of relief from the medical community, but I really wasn't getting what I thought I could in order to get to where I wanted to be, if that makes sense. So they would say to me, oh, you're never gonna get better. This is just gonna get worse for you. And I just didn't see that for my future, right? I didn't see that for myself. So I started exploring alternative methods of healing. And I really went into it to help with the medical piece. And what I was able to really determine is how much more deeply all of this ran, and how my physical body was really giving me a lot of cues of areas where I needed deeper healing. And I'm a therapist. I've been a therapist for over 16 years. And I've been in therapy myself on and off for my entire life. Well, basically since I was about 7 years old. So I've done a lot of self-awareness work. I've done a lot of self-improvement work. And I could only get to a certain point with that as well. And it wasn't until I entered this energetic and spiritual world of healing that I was really able to realize how deeply a lot of these things run. And it's amazing how, yes, I've had some, help with my medical issues and with my physical body, but I would have to say that the biggest shifts and changes have been made for me emotionally, and my level of confidence and my level of clarity, and just feeling happier and lighter, lifting a lot of those layers of like, guilt, shame, obligation, etc., that were kind of weighing me down, anxiety, and highlighting them and really diving into them so that I could clear them and become a more open, expansive version of who I was. So, so say hello if you're jumping on. I'm going to dive into this topic of loneliness, and I'd love to hear your feedback on it as well. And we can definitely get a discussion going if that serves you. So, all right. So this idea of loneliness is really, it has nothing to do with other people, right? It entirely has to do with us. And like I said, a lot of us are being faced with that right now, where if we live alone, we're not really having access to those people that we typically connect with, even if it's on a superficial level. So when you're curing loneliness, you don't start with connection all the time. That's something that you get to, and it's certainly something that you can dive into, but that's kind of like the flooding approach, right? Like, okay, I'm feeling lonely and I'm just gonna dive into connection. And I think sometimes what happens when we do that is that we come at it from this desperate place with this desperate energy. And so we're clinging on to it. It can lead to codependency. We're clinging on to, all right, I'm diving into this connection with this person, even if I'm really not connected to, what they're going to say back to me, or respecting what they're going to say back to me, or implementing anything that comes from this connection. I'm just desperate for it, right? And so I'm going to latch on to that. And that's not going to get you what you want, right? That's going to end up with you continuing to crash and then come back, and then crash and then come back, right? To that feeling of loneliness, because it's just a temporary Band-Aid. So you really need to look at what are the things that are occurring that lead to that feeling of loneliness. Okay, so it could be an environment you're in, it could be certain people, it could be certain thoughts that go through your head, or certain scenarios that you happen to play out in your life. Okay, so you can kind of ask yourself, what are these areas that cue the loneliness to come up? All right, so that can certainly just give you a certain level of awareness or information about this is interesting. This seems to be associated with so-and-so or with a certain situation in my life, okay? And so those are times that you then get curious, okay? You don't blame another person. You don't blame the situation. I mean, you can, but it's not going to help you. It's not going to help you heal or move forward, okay? So at that point you say, all right, let me get curious, not judging yourself, not judging anyone else, but saying, all right, what is it about this person that is a reflection of something that's going on in me or something deeper in me, okay? So when you are engaging with other people, everything that you see in them is entirely a reflection of yourself and what you either haven't resolved within yourself, or it's a reflection of the fact that you are so like zen and in alignment with the core of who you are that other people really don't rock you that much. These scenarios, these interactions don't really take away from your solace, okay? You're that pillar of strength, all right? So let me just check in on the comments. I always feel lost and alone. I feel like, yes. And Kathy, I'd love it if you could reach out to me privately as well with that question, because I feel like that's such a common feeling. And it's something that I have felt much of my life until recently, to be honest with you. Again, nobody's to blame for that. It doesn't mean that the relationships in my life aren't meaningful, and it doesn't mean that I don't have really close connected ties. It means that I had a lot of things to resolve within me, and also to be aware of my purpose here. You know, that my purpose here was, I guess, much different and greater than I really ever anticipated or knew from a conscious or egoic standpoint, you know? So really getting in touch with the spiritual purpose for why I am here on this planet and the purpose that I am serving for other people as well as myself, okay? So I'm trying to think of where I was before. I was talking about, yeah, just tuning into this awareness, right, of what triggers our loneliness. And then once we do that and we get in tune with the awareness of that, we then get curious about that. Okay, what is it about this scenario or this person that is reflecting fears, insecurities, areas where I'm just not very clear or very confident, okay? And so that gives us more information, right? And a lot of times what that can highlight is, oh, there's an area within myself that I really need to explore more, or that I need to heal in order to not be attracting these types of people or situations into my experience, okay? Because we obviously want to attract into our experience those things that make us feel lit up, those things that make us feel joyful, that make us feel expansive, okay? We don't want to feel ashamed. We don't want to feel negative and all of that. But when we sit in loneliness, we're feeling bad for ourselves, right? We're feeling bad for ourselves. And it's kind of like a poor me victim mentality. And I'm not blaming any of you who might adopt this mentality. I was in it for most of my life. So, and it just didn't serve me. And, you know, I would hear that and people would tell me that, but then I eventually got to the point where I started doing the work on it and really coming out of it and realizing how much it truly didn't serve me and how much of me was there under the surface that I didn't necessarily see on a regular basis because I had blocks to it, okay? So there's a couple different perspectives on this. And one of them is that this idea that when we feel lonely, it's because there's fragmented parts of us that are kind of scattered, okay, in our experiences in the world, leaving our energy with other people or scenarios that isn't really serving us, okay? And we've ended up scattering our energy either because we're empaths and we're highly sensitive people, and so we're kind of leaving pieces of us behind because our boundaries aren't secure enough, our boundaries aren't in place enough to not give those away, right? And so at that point, with all the scattered energy, we're feeling lonely because there's pieces of us that are not, you know, really coming back to the whole, coming back to us feeling whole and us feeling integrated and cohesive, okay? And when that happens, we feel lonely because we feel like there's a part of us that's missing. So this process that we go through to try to combat loneliness is to kind of bring those scattered pieces back to us so that we can integrate the whole and be able to say, wow, I am experiencing and appreciating the whole spectrum of me, right? From what I might label good, what I might label neutral, what I might label bad. Regardless, I am whole, and I am going to embrace all of those components of me. And that includes all of your experiences, all of your relationships, things that have happened to you over the years, that they have all served a purpose to fulfill and create this whole integrated part of who you are and the purpose that you serve to be here. Okay, so Nala says, I'm living independent from my family yet. Now I feel the pressure of protecting me outside and when I go back home. Okay, can you share a little bit more about that, Nala? I'm having a little trouble understanding. So I understand you're living independently from your family. You feel you feel a pressure of protecting you from, because of the virus, like what's going on outside right now. Or are you thinking about putting boundaries in place so that when you go back home to your family, you feel like you're in a better place? So let me know your thoughts on that. All right. So this idea of kind of integrating those scattered parts of us, and a lot of times people shy away from that. You know, people really shy away from taking these scattered pieces of who we are and bringing them back together, because some of them are not ideal. Some of them are not things that we really love to revisit, okay? Or they're pieces of us that we're avoiding, or they're pieces of us that we question and we say, you know what, I'm judging that about myself. And there you go. I mean, you can read Judgment Detox by Gabrielle Bernstein. She has some great exercises in there for this same concept of other people and situations are reflections back to us of our own judgments of ourselves, right? Our own maybe unrealistic standards of ourselves. And so it's important for us to evaluate those and decide what we want to keep and what we don't want to keep, okay? And I'll get to that in a minute, because that is one way to get through and combat loneliness, okay? So there's these fragmented parts of ourselves, and how do we kind of collect them, right? So one of the best ways, obviously, is to gather awareness of what these scattered pieces of us are. So we can do that through some techniques like therapy, going to therapy, journaling, getting in touch with our physical body. So that can be through exercise, through yoga, through literally just physical touch, you know, putting your hand on your heart, putting your hand on your belly, taking some deep breaths in, spending time in stillness with yourself, being able to, this can especially come out through journaling, being able to see patterns or themes that come up repeatedly that activate negative feelings for us, okay? It could be anxiety, it could be depression, shame, guilt, any kind of upset, okay? And realizing that as we write down these things in our journals, or as we kind of, you know, note these things in our mind, or, you know, encapsulate them in some way, put them into reality, whether you are, you know, speaking out loud about them to somebody else, or speaking them out loud when you're in the shower or whatever, but that you are creating this log, right, of these things and these areas of awareness that you're coming to when you're triggered, quote unquote triggered, right? A lot of people love that word now. So when you're triggered, okay, is there a theme about the trigger? Is there a theme about the thought that comes up after you've been triggered? Is there a theme of how your physical body is reacting because of maybe a previous trauma or something? Okay, so getting curious about what themes could be presenting. You know, the other way is to do past life work, to do ancestral work, to get to know your history. Okay, whether that's a soul history through past life work, or whether it's a human history through learning about your ancestry, learning about, you know, generations before you, because we carry those things forward with us into this lifetime. Okay, so we can also get some information about scattered energy there. All right, usually if we're feeling like a really significant level of anger or resentment to another person or a situation, that means we've left a piece of our energy there because we haven't fully resolved that. Especially if we're looking at low vibe emotions like shame, guilt, depression, anxiety. You know, we have left a piece of us somewhere, and we need to bring it back to us. Okay, I do find that current life regressions are very productive with this, which is like going back into an earlier time in your life visually. It's just through like an imaginal experience. And so you go back to this previous time in your life and gather some information about, you know, when was the first time that I really experienced this? Or when is the time that I remember that I experienced this emotion or these thoughts or this loneliness? And how can I go back there and get more information about it? How can I go back there with the wisdom that I have now, right? To understand and get a context for what's going on, and also offer myself wisdom during a time when I might have, you know, felt kind of scared or felt kind of scattered or confused or, you know, intimidated by jumping into this. Okay, so Nala says, also I feel that I'm in a fake social circle, just mutual services. I didn't yet reach out to my authentic communities. Yeah, and reaching out, you know, I was saying earlier that kind of reaching out to those connections or communities can feel kind of daunting and intimidating before you do the other loneliness work. Because the other piece too, guys, is when you're reaching out for connection and you're really diving into that right away, again, yes, there's this desperate energy behind it. But like I said, you can also dive into codependency where you're really relying on other people to fulfill that sense of loneliness. And while that can be productive temporarily to provide you with a place and a foundation of safety and security, it's not a long-term solution, you know? And I think that's what happened to me is that, you know, I do have a lot of loving supports in my life. I do have a lot of connections and solid connections. But they were Band-Aids, you know, and they're good for me, don't get me wrong. And they offered me this space to feel like, okay, I can explore myself safely and I can explore these other alternatives and connections safely. So it gives you a context for doing that and a foundation, which I think is really productive. But I don't want you to become dependent on it, because then you're just kind of selling yourself a bill of goods that's not going to deliver long term. And you're going to feel like you keep returning to this feeling of loneliness and like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I kick this? These people are here for me. They really care about me. And yet it's not sinking in. I'm not internalizing it and it's not sticking, right? And then you can feel really defeated and kind of upset with yourself, leading to greater levels of self-criticism, depression, etc. Okay? So there's these fragmented pieces of ourselves. That's one of the first parts, okay? The other part is really getting in touch with that core version of who you are. Like, who are you really? Do you know? We know what we do, we know the roles we play, but do you know who you are? And the only way that we can really identify this is by connecting to ourselves in stillness, okay? We can do this through inner child work as well, which I used to think was really cheesy and dumb. And I was like, that's kind of like therapy mumbo jumbo talk, right? Which I always try to avoid that in my sessions with clients, because I feel like there's, you know, there's typical standard therapy responses of how does that make you feel, you know? And I just don't find that that is productive with a lot of people. I like to be very real, very genuine with people. And so I think it's really important to get still with yourself and do the inner child work with a trusted other. It could be a therapist. It could be a close loved one. It could be a friend. And you could do it with yourself and just kind of have a backup plan if you need some support, if things are coming up that are really upsetting. But I have to say the inner child work is very healing. It's also very deep. And it's very releasing. You know, it brings things up. And that's what a lot of people think. Oh, when I pull in that scattered energy or those scattered pieces of myself, or I dig up some of this stuff that might be in the basement, is it going to make me unstable? Is it going to get me to the point where I feel like I can't function? You know, and that's why you want to make sure that you have kind of a backup support if you're digging in a little deeply, because we do that and those emotions come up, not to torture us, not because it's a signal that says we shouldn't be doing it, but because we're being called to release it. Okay, it's coming up because it wants to get out, right? If it wanted to stay stuck, we wouldn't see it, okay? We would be oblivious to it. It would be in our subconscious, even our unconscious minds, and we would be having these automatic responses based on it, but it wouldn't be something that we had in our awareness, okay? So one of the best ways that we can help cure loneliness is to look at areas where we might feel well, we already talked about being separated from ourselves, but also look at areas of fear. I wrote a couple notes here, so I'm just going to check in to make sure. So areas of fear most often signal areas of self-doubt, areas where we don't trust ourselves, areas where we don't feel comfortable that we are going to make good judgments or decisions, okay, on our behalf, on other people's behalf, okay? So anytime we're dealing with fear or self-doubt, we're dealing with an issue of safety and security, okay? Not feeling safe, not feeling secure, like we have that foundation, like I was just talking about, okay? So we need to establish security and safety. So how do we do that? All right, so one of the ways that we do that is, yes, you can temporarily rely on somebody else so that you can get your bearings, but again, it's with the intention that you are going to use this person as a crutch while you integrate it for yourself, that they don't just become your new safety blanket, okay? And then what you do is you start to practice presence, okay? One of the best ways for us to be grounded and to feel safe and secure is to tune into our physical bodies and our five senses. So anytime that you can integrate a grounding tool or a safety and security tool that includes all 5 senses at the same time, the more effective it's going to be. Okay, so give me an example of drinking tea, right? Where I'm getting warmth, I'm getting taste, I'm getting smell, while I maybe watch a show that I really like, which gives me sight and sound. Or that I'm going to listen to music that I really like while I light a candle and I look at the candle flame, or I look at pictures of my kids or something like that. But the more that you can integrate all 5 senses, the more you're going to stay more in that present moment, which is going to help you feel safe, secure, grounded in your physical body. Obviously, any type of physical work is very helpful in that way too, okay? The other thing is exercising choice, okay? A lot of fear, and especially going on right now, my friends, is this feeling of helplessness, this feeling of, I'm not gonna know how to do this, right? That's why I said it's very, very intertwined with self-doubt, okay? And so we don't feel confident in ourselves. We feel like we're gonna make these poor judgments. So look at the things in your life that you can control. What are those areas that you do have control over that you can do something about? It could be as simple as cleaning your shower. It could be as simple as tying your shoes, making yourself breakfast, something like that. But being very mindful and intentional about, I'm choosing to control something, engage in an activity that I know well, that I feel confident in, that I feel well versed, okay? And make choices that put you in a position to feel that level of confidence, that level of security and safety, okay? So we do have those choices. We are not stuck in obligations or shoulds or anything like that. That is all boxed in based on our conditioned thinking, okay? All right, so let me know if you have questions so far on that. So now that we have a little bit of control and a little bit of safety and security, and we're starting to establish this in ourselves, we're taking actions to take control. We're taking actions to choose things to bring into our lives that really align with who we want to become. We're giving our minds and our bodies the message that we are reliable at that point, okay? The more consistent we become with that, we give ourselves the message, you are reliable, I can lean back on you. I can lean back on myself, okay? And that encourages self-trust and it squashes self-doubt, okay? Because we are continuing to show ourselves that we are a solid force moving forward, okay? We're committed to our goals and we're moving forward. And when that happens, we then see ourselves as our own foundation, right? This person that we can rely on. So creating a level of consistency, and it can literally be, a minute a day. It's not like you have to devote, huge amounts of time and energy to this level of consistency and commitment to yourself. It's just the act and the intention behind the act to say, I am doing this for me, okay? All right, so the other 2 pieces of this, okay, with curing loneliness, well, I guess I should say 3. So one is this idea of shame, and this comes from Teal Swan's book, The Anatomy of Loneliness. So this idea of shame, that there's something about us that feels ashamed of experiences we've had in the past, relationships we've had, stupid decisions we think that we've made, right? And we feel ashamed. And one of the best ways, I think the best way to cure that is through compassion. I don't know if any of you have ever read Brené Brown's books, but she does a lot of work on shame. And she talks about the 3 C's, and that is courage, compassion, and connection, right? Which really overlaps a lot with this loneliness concept and curing loneliness work, okay? Which is that, yes, you have the courage to make those choices like we just talked about, and to take actions that are consistent and reliable so that you become your own foundation. But then you also have compassion for yourself. And this is where that inner child piece comes in as well, like showing compassion for yourself, just like you would show compassion to a little nugget, who was having a tough time or who was feeling scared or not feeling brave enough or feeling really lonely. You would connect with them, you would show them compassion. So showing yourself a similar level of compassion. And that can be choosing to going to get yourself a Starbucks if it makes you feel happy, or, giving yourself that little piece of chocolate, or taking a bath, or putting on a lotion that you really like, but just really showing yourself compassion. And I personally think that compassion is also, it's very critical to have patience intertwining with that as well, because we can't be compassionate if we're not being patient and allowing somebody to go through whatever it is they're going through, to express whatever it is they're expressing, even if it's negative, even if it's something that kind of sets us off and makes us feel uncomfortable, that we have the patience to kind of wait that out and show them compassion regardless of how it makes us feel, regardless of how we want to react, and kind of save them or set things straight so that we can help them move forward, right? So we're going to approach ourselves in the same way, by showing ourselves that compassion, okay? Being a parent to ourselves. So that's another piece. And then there's two more pieces. So one is connection, which was brought up in Teal Swan's book and also from Brene Brown. And obviously, connection is something that helps us with loneliness. And a lot of us shy away from this for a couple reasons. Some people think, well, I'm going to burden people. I don't want to be annoying. And I don't also want people to kind of show me attention and take care of me just because I ask them to. Like, I want them to take their own initiative. And I got to call BS on that, my friends. I have to call BS on that. That's an excuse. That's an avoidance strategy. If you want something and you need something, ask for it. Take the initiative and ask for it, because you need to be in a space of receiving from other people in order to heal yourself, in order to help cure loneliness, okay? And that receiving can be, I just want to receive love. I want to receive money. I want to receive good health. I want to receive freedom and peace and all of that. Whatever it is you want to receive, you need to be in a space where you're not in resistance to what you're asking for or what you're looking for, which means that you need to take initiative, okay? And this doesn't have to be calling somebody and saying, hey, I'm, 911, I'm really having a tough time and I need some help. You don't have to tell them your deepest, darkest. It's simply connection. It can literally be, hey, I want to go on a walk together, or I want to go to a movie, meaning I don't want to talk to you really. Like, I don't really want to have a conversation because I'm kind of not in the mood. And, I'm really not sure how much I like people right now. So I literally just want to be in the physical presence of someone else. Right? And sometimes being in the physical presence of someone else can just be comforting in itself and help with loneliness in itself, okay? Because there's an energetic exchange there when you're in physical proximity to another human, okay? It does help. Does it cure it entirely? No, but it helps, okay? One of the ways that my clients have been the most effective at shifting this and being in more of a space of receiving is by giving and serving others. Right? Because when we give, and we give wholeheartedly, not to get something back, but just because we want connection. Okay, so we're gonna say, well, you know what? I want to connect to so-and-so. I'm gonna make some cookies today and drop them off just because I want to nurture that connection. Right? And when we do that, we are nurturing connection, we are boosting them, we are boosting ourselves, and it all comes back, and then we receive, right? So if you're not comfortable receiving, practice giving. Practice serving others. Okay? Instead of sitting there and saying, oh, poor me, I don't have anybody to talk to, or I feel alone and isolated. Okay? There's always ways, especially with the internet, to serve, to give. Okay? So let me know if you guys have questions or if this is pissing you off, because a lot of these concepts pissed me off when I first heard about them, and I had to do my own work to work through them. Okay. The last thing that I will share about the cure for loneliness is, honestly, guys, it's a spiritual journey. It truly is. It is a spiritual journey to connect with yourself, with the soul version of you. Okay? And I've always been somebody who has practiced spirituality and has been spiritual. But the level of spirituality has really skyrocketed in the last 4 years or so. And the more that I tune in through meditation, through the Akashic Records, through journaling practices, or any kind of intentional practice to get in touch with that soul version of who I am, the more my confidence grows, the more that I'm really clear. Like, that's what it's given me the most, is clarity, decisiveness, and confidence. To be able to say, I know who I am, which means I know where I want to go. I know what lights me up and makes me feel passionate and amazing. I know how to set boundaries to make sure that those boundaries aren't crossed. Okay. And once I really cultivate this, and again, coming back to that choice and that consistency, I choose every freaking day, guys. There are days that I wake up and I'm like, ugh. There are days that I do. And I intentionally get myself out of it. And I used to have a lot of cycles of depression. And I would at those times feel like, oh, I can't, this is too much. I can't get out of this. Or like when I would feel hormonal or something and feel like, oh, I can't get out of a hormonal mood that owns me. You know what I mean? And now I know how much, yes, it takes some practice, but I promise you, the more that you practice it, the more that it will really kick in and it will become automatic for you. I promise it will. It takes 21 days to make a habit. Guess what we have right now, guys? Time to be with ourselves, time to really sink in and say, I'm going to start a new habit. I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to choose myself. I'm going to choose to get to know myself really, really well. Even those parts that embarrass the crap out of me, or even those parts that I think suck, or even those parts that I've criticized myself for in the past. Okay? And really take that opportunity to say, I'm just going to start a habit of 60 seconds a day. I'm going to do something to devote to myself, devotion time for you. One of the things the Akashic Records has been calling me to a lot lately is sacred ritual, right? Bringing ourselves to taking intentional time to set aside to connect with ourselves. That's what it is, right? And the ritual is just something tangible. Like I keep using the example of like drinking a cup of tea, right? Because that's obviously something that we can just sit down and like enjoy drinking a cup of tea, snuggle with it, whatever you want to do. But being intentional about that's a ritual for me, or it's a ritual for me to read every night before bed, or it's a ritual for me. But going in there with the thought of, I am going to do this to set aside for myself and not focus on anything else during that time, right? The power of presence. We talked about that as being one of those pieces to helping cure loneliness, okay? And really ground and feel safe and secure, building a foundation for ourselves within ourselves, okay? So let me know if you guys have questions about this, but I have to say I'm pretty excited because when I was able to realize this a few days ago, that I have officially cured loneliness in myself. And I really thought that there was just always going to be a piece of me that was like, it's just going to be a part of me that's always not fully fulfilled, you know, and it just comes from my past and it comes from things that have happened and I'm fragmented and whatever. But I can honestly say that that's gone. And I feel this really deep sense of peace and connection to myself and appreciation at all times, even when I'm pissy, even when I don't feel well, even when I'm cranky. And that is such a gift because it's me really feeling like you're giving yourself the message when you do this work that you are deserving, right? That you are worth giving this time, energy, and love to. And that's so important, you know, because we don't always feel that all the time. And we're looking for validation from others, whether it's from work, having your boss say, hey, great job. And you don't feel like you did a great job until your boss says so, or you're getting reassurance or feedback or validation from people in your lives. And again, I'm not saying that that's not something that supports us temporarily, but it's not a long-term solution. You know, for me now, when I'm feeling a little off, whether it's anxiety, whether it's sadness, whether it's fatigue, you know, just feeling kind of run down, the first thing that I do is I tune into myself through either some breathing techniques, through meditation, through the Akashic Records. A lot of times for me, it's chanting or singing, you know, that I tune back into myself and I find that sense of stillness and that sense of peace. And it's such a deep level of peace and I'm soothing myself. And wow, I mean, I've been teaching self-soothing for years, for over 16 years in therapy. And I'm telling you, I'm not saying it didn't work because I've always been a very successful therapist and very connected to my clients, but this has opened my eyes to a level of depth that I really didn't even know was there, to be honest with you. So loneliness runs deep. It really does run very deeply. And I think this is one of the reasons why I was interested in exploring it too, is because I have a lot of patients that have had the same issue, you know, so that they might be able to improve in certain areas of their mood or their mental health or their physical lives or their functioning or what have you. But this thread of loneliness or emptiness or not quite good enough was still kind of following them, you know? And it was disconcerting because, you know, I don't want people to feel defeated. I want people to feel successful and motivated and like, oh, I'm making progress. And then this progress motivates me to do even more work on myself. And because it's not easy, you know, it's not easy to open up Pandora's box and not sit in it, you know, to be able to know how to navigate it when you dig it up. And what to do with it and how to move forward. So if you have questions about that or you need guidance, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to support you. And today is actually the last day for a ridiculously big bonus for my Activate course that's coming up on April 2nd. And it's $426 in bonuses, my friends. There's going to be a couple bonuses after today, but they are going to be, they're only going to be worth $150. So today is the day. If you guys are interested in, really getting to this much deeper level of healing and deeper level of comfort and soothing, finding that within you, connecting to that, taking off the layers of conditioning, etc., and really being able to open yourself up to the core of who you are, to that passionate part of who you are that you probably felt when you were a little kid, riding your bike or playing outside or laughing and feeling joyful, right? So I would love to have you join me. The energy that has been coming through the Akashic Records for this journey has been absolutely intense. I mean, nurturing, soothing, intense, expansive. And I'm just really eager to share it with others because it's brought me so much peace. It's funny, I keep saying that over the past week or two, the level of intensity in the Akashic Records has become much bigger, much more powerful, much more soothing. And, I think that it's in response to the chaos, right? And to this feeling of helplessness and unknown that we're having as well. And I just want people to be able to access that because there's a lot of people who are hurting and scared right now. So please feel free to reach out to me individually. If you have any questions, you can contact me through Messenger. You can go to my website, theakashictherapist.com. You can join me in my free Facebook group, Room for Healing, where I post most of my content. And, there obviously feel a little bit more comfortable with sharing and asking questions, etc. So I will put the link here for Activate, which is the course that starts on April 2nd. I will put the link for Room for Healing. And if you guys have any questions about loneliness or this is something that you've been dealing with chronically, I would be more than happy to guide you and support you and hold space for you so that you can kind of use it as a launch pad and then be able to rely on yourself going forward, because that's so empowering. And I think that's what can often be missing, can sometimes be missing in the therapy world versus the spiritual and energetic healing world, is that feeling of I'm really empowered and can entirely rely on myself to be able to move forward and do this, okay? Don't lose hope. I promise you, you can do it. I've been there before and felt like, I'm just resigning myself to being who I am for the rest of my life. And we always have a choice, guys. We always have a choice to turn it around. We always have a choice to be a new version of ourselves, to recreate. We are all composed of energy, of moving atoms and molecules. And so we can constantly shift it and morph it and create it into what we want it to be, create ourselves into what we want to be, create our health, create this globe, this crisis that we're currently in, into what we want it to be. So I'm happy to empower you to do so, to support you and hold your hand as you navigate it. And, I actually made a list of all of the things that I have worked on starting from the beginning, because I know that if I had jumped right into the Akashic Records at first, I would have been scared away and I never would have done any of this work. I started with affirmations and learning about like the moon a little bit and, kind of eased my way in. So been there, done that. If you guys are kind of shying away from this or a little freaked out or like, I don't know what this is. I've been at all those layers of levels of skepticism and confusion and overwhelm and avoidance, really, resistance. So I'm happy to help you through that. So let me know if you guys have questions, and thanks so much for joining me tonight, and I'll talk to you very soon. All right, bye.